This next video was taken inside a mansion that is well known for being extremely haunted. On July 30th of 2022, Sabrina and her husband Carl decide to take a tour of the Aston Hall mansion located in Birmingham, England. The place itself isn't just known for being haunted, but also for its immaculate architecture that many are taken aback when seeing it in person. But it seems that the real reason people come here isn't just to admire the beauty of this place, but to experience the hauntings that tourists have encountered. There's a room in this mansion that once belonged to a young woman named Mary Holt. The story goes that Mary's father had heard that she planned to run away and marry one of the servants who worked there. Upset that his daughter would do such a thing, he goes to her room and locks her inside. Years would pass, and Mary would still be locked up inside this room. It was after 16 years of being grounded that Mary passed away. It is said that she died of starvation, but also partly of a broken heart. Now the story itself is quite tragic, but it seems that it wasn't tragic enough for Sabrina's husband, as according to her, he thought it would be funny to call out Mary after learning about her story. This is something Sabrina regrets, as she says that if it wasn't for her spouse calling out Mary, this chilling encounter wouldn't have happened. The two are climbing up the stairs to Mary's room when this is captured.
Mary? You mean you no harm? We know you're in there. We've seen you. Where are you, Mary? Mary?
Did you see it?
Mary? Mary? Are you still in there, Mary? You can come out now.
Inside Mary's old room, a shadow-like figure darts across the chamber in a swift motion. The two stand in silence while breathing heavily in anticipation. It doesn't show itself again until moments later after being called out by Sabrina's husband, as though acknowledging the husband's summoning. Now, something worth mentioning is that the couple doesn't enter the room to see what's inside. The reason for not doing so, according to them, is that the museum prohibits anyone from entering the room. As with any historical piece on display, this one is off limits to the public. To this day, Sabrina and her husband have no idea as to who or even what was caught on camera. Marcos Garcia is the owner of a small car shop that is currently operated by just one mechanic. This mechanic is the only employee at this workshop, and it was just recently that he received a car from a customer who needed repairs on the vehicle. Ever since receiving this car though, strange things have been happening around the place. Both the business owner and the mechanic believe that there's something quite mysterious about this car. They don't know what it is, but they have a slight suspicion that it might be the reason as to why unexplainable things have been happening recently. This vehicle, according to them, scares them. Although feeling creeped out by the car's presence, they don't think much of it and carry on with their daily assignments. But then one day, a very peculiar incident is caught on camera. Marcos, the business owner, is watching over the shop through a security camera when he notices the mechanic acting very strange. The old man was moving in such a way that it made him feel very unsettled. But when the mechanic was asked as to what he was doing, he replied that he was talking to the client who had dropped off the creepy car. Marcos, though, found this very unusual. The video Marcos had seen tells a different story. This is what he saw.
Oye, este weón se volvió loco. Estoy revisando por la cámara del taller de mi teléfono, estoy en mi casa. Y este maestro está hablando solo. No cacho qué onda. De verdad que no cacho qué onda. No, está hablando solo. Le voy a preguntar por cámara qué está haciendo. A ver, vamos a preguntar. ¿Sabes que consígueme el teléfono con la Connie, porfa? ¿Pero con quién habla, weón? ¿Aló? Oye, disculpa, pero ¿con quién estás hablando?
Con don Carlos, que me está viendo, pasando el presupuesto y explicándole el tema del accidente que tuvo anoche en la carretera. Entonces me está dando el presupuesto y yo estoy explicándole lo que le estoy diciendo.
Oye, cálmate. ¿Qué, don Carlos? Pero, oye, escúchame un poquito. ¿Tú me estás hablando del accidente de anoche?
Claro.
Juan, me estáis huellando, ¿cierto?
No, pues es que con don Carlos aquí, pues. Le estoy explicándole todo.
Oye, podéis subir. ¿Sabes qué? Oye, es que no estáis hablando con nadie, viejo.
No puede ser, pues yo tengo el caballero aquí al frente mío, pues.
No estás hablando con nadie, Juan, y ayer los que chocaron murieron todos. Juan, no estás con nadie. Sube y ven a ver las cámaras. Tengo todo grabado. Sube, viejo. Sube, vente al tiro. Si no estás con nadie, Juan. Viejo, no, tengo grabado. Vente, por favor. Vente.
Confused and slightly unsettled by the old man's behavior, Marcos immediately calls him to ask what exactly is happening. To his shock, the mechanic replies that Carlos, the client who had dropped off the car days ago, was visiting him to discuss details about his car and a racing accident that occurred the night before. Marcos was chilled to his core. Hearing him mention the racing accident from last night was beyond strange. As it turns out, Carlos, the client, had passed away in a terrible street racing accident the night before. The mechanic had not been aware of this incident until recently. The question is though, how could it be that the alleged spirit of Carlos had paid the mechanic a visit? Is the so-called haunted car responsible for this? Or is this simply a case of someone who's become slightly unhinged from doing too much work at the shop? Just like Marcos, viewers believe that something supernatural was caught on camera. The following video comes from James Fodder, who recently bought a doll from a secondhand store. Apparently, the doll is worth a lot more than what the store was selling it for. For this reason, James had bought the doll. However, ever since bringing it home, strange things have been happening. From hearing strange noises at night to seeing doors open and close on their own, James suspects that the doll might be responsible for the unusual activity. And so, he decides to record the doll in front of a camera inside an empty room. He hopes to capture footage of something that would prove it's haunted. Initially, nothing odd is captured in the first few days of recording, but then, one night, something very strange happens. Now the camera that he uses is programmed to move wherever it picks up movement, so if something moves, it will point to that object. We can see it doing that in this footage, but strangely, the camera pans around the room as though it's picking up movement from somewhere. This is what was captured. Could it be that the camera is detecting an unseen presence? Or is it just not functioning properly? Although it's likely that there's a problem with the camera, something really creepy happens 2 nights later inside the room, which has made him think that the camera was actually picking up something. James is away from home when the following happens. He writes, "Just wow, I've been leaving the closets open in case anyone thinks I'm hiding inside. I don't even know what to say." This is what was captured. Out of James's bathroom comes out what appears to be a dark, shapeless figure. It seems to dart across the floor before disappearing from sight. James believes that this may have been the apparition that was being picked up earlier by the camera. He also thinks that this mysterious figure might be attached to the doll. Ever since then, he's been filming more at night. Little does he know that he'd be capturing something way more terrifying than this. James is sleeping in his room upstairs when the following happens. On camera, the doll moves on its own. It appears to move for just a few seconds before abruptly stopping. Feeling very unsettled, James posts the footage online to see if anyone could explain this video. It's not sure if he'll continue to hold on to this doll based on what occurred, but it might be best if he keeps it locked up inside this room, as an occurrence like this definitely warrants it. And captures footage of something pretty disturbing. The following video comes from a salesman who was traveling overseas for a business trip. Due to travel restrictions affected by COVID, the salesman had self-quarantine for a total of 7 days. His self-quarantine took place at a hotel where he booked a room all for himself, but during the 7 days that he's there, something really creepy happens. On the second night of his quarantine, the salesman is talking to a friend via webcam when all of a sudden, this happens.
マジでなんか部屋間違えたんじゃない
飯の時はノックされるんやけど。
隔離はいつまで
あと5日。
After checking to see who was knocking at his door, the salesman returns to his seat, seeming unfazed by the mysterious knocks. He chalks it up to a hotel employee who might have accidentally knocked on the wrong door. A few minutes pass, and the conversation between the two then segues to the topic of food served at the hotel. But as they continue to talk, something shakes up the salesman.
Oh. アジア料理が多いね、やっぱ。
また聞こえたね。
また？
今録画してるまだ。
してる。
あ、ちょっと待って。
何してんの？
ちょっと見て。
その強盗とかだったらやばいんじゃない？
まあ、証拠取れ。
証拠？ちょっとフリーズしてるけど、証拠取れなくない？あ、大丈夫。いないじゃん。誰もいない。
誰もいないし。
おう。
見た？
前の部屋のやつがなんかいたずらでやってんじゃないの
？It is at this moment when his friend thinks that a next-door neighbor is playing tricks on him, yet the salesman isn't sure if anyone is occupying the rooms near him. His friend then jokes that the room he is in might be haunted. The salesman doesn't think much of this and decides to go to bed. However, later that night, he is woken up by someone knocking at his door. Though this time, he fails to capture anything on camera as the knocking stopped when he started recording. But he was now more determined than ever to catch whoever it was that was playing with him. The next day, as he waits patiently for the knocks to occur, this happens. Once again, there is no one at the door. He checks both ends of the hallway, but not a single person is in sight. It is at this point that the salesman questions his sanity. But just when things couldn't get any more creepy, something else happens that has left him completely spooked. The following night, he is woken up once again by mysterious knockings, but this time, something far more unexplainable happens. After checking again to find no one at the door, the salesman turns around and sees all doors inside open. Naturally, he was in total shock. He was now convinced that the room he had booked is actually haunted. Perhaps his friend was right after all. Something is inside this room. It's what happens the following night though that leaves him beyond terrified. On the 6th night of his quarantine, he decides to use his PC camera to capture anything that may occur inside his room. The camera is left recording as he goes to bed. And to no surprise, he is woken up by someone knocking at his door. But as he walks over to the entrance, the salesman immediately notices something odd. The knocking doesn't appear to be coming from outside, but rather from inside his room. Upon opening the door, he finds no one there. The salesman is at a loss for words. He is now sure that whatever is going on is beyond explanation. Now, it's a good thing the salesman had set up a second camera, as the following incident would have gone unnoticed. During the time he's inside the bathroom, a bottle falls on its own. If you look closely, you can see the bottle move slowly towards the edge before falling over. Like with all occurrences, this one has left him baffled. Luckily though, the salesman won't be staying here any longer, as the next day will be the end of his quarantine. To this day, he can't think of anything that could explain what happened in that room. The salesman thinks that the room might be haunted. But, like most videos, it's hard to be sure if that's the case. It's not certain if this whole incident was just a setup, or actual paranormal evidence. Until it's made clear as to what exactly happened, you be the judge on whether or not something paranormal occurred. Next video, a man is hiking in a secluded forest when he stumbles upon a small house that seems to be abandoned. After hesitating at first, he later decides to get close to the property. What happens next is pretty terrifying. This is what he caught.
Fan ass.
It appears that the house wasn't abandoned after all, yet it's unknown as to who or even what had been inside. Whether it was the owner of the house or something else, there's no denying that whoever or whatever this was has left the man completely disturbed. Maybe next time he'll think twice before entering a house in the middle of a forest.